Thanks for joining me today and welcome back to my tropical vacation house. I'm going to be spending the entire session today crafting a single item, a top tier jetpack. And this item is crazy powerful, fast, and everything else, but it's also crazy to craft. I'm not going to step through the entire process with you, as that would probably put you to sleep, but we'll take a look at the resources we're going to need. I'll introduce you to some of the crafting mechanics, and then we'll kind of rip the crafting recipe apart a little bit, just to get an overview of the whole process, and some of the harder parts, or the more complicated parts. And finally, I'll run a fast time lapse of me crafting the recipe and pulling my hair out in frustration, probably, and then we'll see how our new 50 million RF per tick. And it also has a charger, which means that it can charge all the other stuff in my inventory. So like my Flux-Infused bow, my staff of traveling, and anything else, my wireless terminal, all that stuff, it will charge for me if we're not within the range of our wireless charger bit, just so that we can get a sense of what this is like. So this is hover mode, and you can tell we do sync a little bit as we're hovering. And this is the speed we go normally, and then if we sprint, we go this fast. So this guy is pretty freaking fast. So we'll see how this compares to what we're gonna get here. But this recipe is insane, and that's why I'm kind of dedicating this whole session to making this thing, because this recipe is nuts. And what I've actually done is I've created an ME chest here, separate from, well, it's actually still in the same network, but I separated some items into this ME chest just so that we can see exactly what this thing is going to take. So we're going to need 235 redstone, 84 glowstone, 66 silver, 56 gold, 42 nether quartz, 31 iron, 31 tin, 25 diamonds, coal, 15 blaze powder, 15 sulfur, 15 copper ingots, 10 lead ingots, 8 glass, 8 ender pearls, 8 niter, which comes from saltpeter, or you can also use saltpeter, blizz powder, 8 blizz powder, 5 ferrous, 4 leather, and 2 shiny ingots. So shiny ingots are very rare. Ferrous is kind of rare. Blizz powder is it can be crafted, but otherwise you would get it from a blizz. You would get a blizz rod from a blizz. Now a blizz is kind of like a blaze, except it hangs out in the cold biomes, and it shoots like these snowball things at you or something that make you cold, and they're kind of a tough mod to kill. But when you kill it, you get a blizz rod, or you have a chance of getting a blizz rod. But there's an easier way, and that is to stick some redstone. Actually, we can just look. Where is that thing? It's somewhere in here. Gelid cryothium, blizz powder. If we just stick some redstone in a fluid transposer with a snowball, it will give us blizz powder. So about 1 bucket of redstone, which is 5 pieces of redstone, and 5 snowballs will give you 5 blizz powder. So I ended up making I ended up making 10 blizz powders. And I've got 8 of them in here for this crafting recipe. So let's get started and kind of start tearing this crafting recipe apart. You know what, before we even get into this, let's talk a little bit about alloys, because we've got this is basically all the raw materials that we're going to need, but we're going to have to craft a bunch of alloys, or I guess you could say smelt a bunch of alloys in order with these materials. So what we're going to need for alloys are as follows: 14 invar, 10 bronze, 64 electrum, 2 signalum, 8 enderium, 20 lumium, and 44 fluxed electrum. And so some of these are pretty expensive, but we'll start with the invar. Invar is pretty easy. You know what? Actually, let me mention also before I continue. Now these materials, this is going to be the cost of upgrading from the resonant jetpack to the Flux-Infused JetPlate. So there's already a tremendous amount of materials that have gone into building this thing. If you want to know the grand total, if you're like starting from scratch and you're starting off with the actually we're up here, and this is the Ender-IO line, and then this is the thermal expansion line. So if you're starting off with the leadstone and moving on up to hardened, and then to reinforced, and then to resonant, because you're actually these are all needed. I mean, you have to start with the leadstone, and then from the leadstone you can make your hardened. And if we look at our hardened, we'll see that it requires the leadstone jet plate, and so on and so forth. Here's your grand total of raw materials you're going to need from the start. You're going to need 27 diamonds, 26 lead, 148 iron, 113 copper, 100 gold, 125 silver, 32 ferrous, 51 tin, 7 shiny, 394 redstone, 30 sulfur, 88 glowstone, 8 leather, 28 glass, 26 blaze powders, 26 coal, 28 ender pearls, 42 quartz, 8 snowballs, 8 niters or saltpeters, and then the 8 blizz powders that we talked about today. So those are all the raw materials that you'll need if you want to make this Flux-Infused JetPlate from scratch. I'm going to go ahead and smelt the alloys off camera with these materials, and I will meet you back at the base. You can of course find the recipes through NEI. I'm not going to go through them all because that would be kind of boring to watch, but you know what, actually I'll show you Enderium because that's the most complicated one, just so you can get a sense of the process if you're not familiar. So the Enderium ingot first requires the, well, let's just look at the ingot first. So we're going to need the Enderium base, pyrotheum dust, and then 2 ender pearls. So the pyrotheum dust is what we're going to need the blaze powder and sulfur for, and pulverized coal, and then redstone. So that's going to make our pyrotheum dust, and then the Enderium base is just 2 tin, a shiny, and a silver. So that's what we're going to need our shiny for. Let's take a look at how to make the blaze powder real quickly in our thermal expansion room. You're going to need a magma crucible and a fluid transposer, and possibly a glacial precipitator for snowballs, unless you have a good source of snowballs out in the world. But the glacial precipitator makes it easy. You just dump a bucket of water in there, and it'll make 8 snowballs per bucket. So first of all, we need destabilized redstone, and to get that, we just stick some redstone in our magma crucible. Each piece of redstone, and I actually have it set up right now to output orange output on this side, which ends up dumping it in the fluid transposer. So we have 100 millibuckets of redstone. So we would need 10 redstone to create a full bucket. I'm actually just going to do 200 millibuckets right now because that's all we need to make a single blizz powder. So then we can just grab a snowball, which I already have. I'm just going to grab one, and we throw it in our fluid transposer, and we're going to have that set to fill, and it's going to take 200 millibuckets of destabilized redstone and our 1 snowball and give us 1 piece of blizz powder. So 2 pieces of redstone, 1 pieces of snowball, right? 2 pieces of redstone, 1 snowball gives us 1 blizz powder. Let's take a closer look at this crafting recipe. I'm not going to go through the whole crafting process with you because it's quite time consuming and cumbersome. But we'll just take a quick look just to get an overview, and I'll kind of highlight some of the things that might be a little bit more, a little bit less straightforward. So we have these fluxed armor plating. We're going to need 12, wait. I think we're going to need some for this too. Yeah, so we're going to need 12 of these. Fluxed armor plating. And then we're going to need 2 of these cryothium coolant units. Our resonant jetpack, which is the one we're wearing right now. And then 2 flux thrusters, which we just peeked at a second ago. That's where the armor plating. And then we're going to need 4 of these glowstone elevation units. A resonant thruster. This is really the craziness of this recipe, is when we get into these thrusters. And actually this guy's pretty crazy too. But then we have the resonant flux the resonant thruster, which is where we're going to need our Enderium, and then some basic stuff, destabilized redstone buckets, and then these innervation dynamos, which are pretty straightforward. This resonant flux pack is a very deep crafting recipe. It has many layers. It requires a resonant flux pack along with Invar armor plating. The armor plating we do in the induction smelter, which is another plating with 10 Invar, and that plating is and then it basically comes down to just a bunch of ingots. So that's pretty straightforward, just very time consuming. And then so here we have the resonant flux pack armored, which requires the armor plating, and then the resonant flux pack, which requires the redstone flux pack and some Enderium, which requires the hardened flux pack and a redstone energy cell frame, which is also a deep recipe. The hardened leadstone flux pack with Invar, and then the leadstone energy cell, leather strap. So that one's pretty deep, but it's relatively straightforward, but it's just, there's a lot to it. We are going to have to stick the energy cell into the fluid transposer, which is a similar process to what we did with the to make the blizz powder. Stick the redstone in our magma crucible, and then have it come over to our fluid transposer, and we stick our I don't remember what we were talking about, our energy cell in there. Our energy cell frame. And there's actually a lot of pieces of this recipe that have a very similar process to this. So our cryothium coolant units is going to be the same thing. We're going to have gelid cryothium. We're going to make this coolant unit, which is just a crafting recipe, and we're going to stick it in here with our gelid cryothium, which is this cryothium dust, which is where we're going to be using our blizz powder. Oh, look at that. The graphic changed for blizz powder and cryothium dust. Huh, cool. And that process is going to repeat itself again with the, let's see, it was going to repeat itself somewhere else too. Oh yeah, the glowstone thing. We're going to need 4 of these glowstone elevation units, which is the empty glowstone elevation unit with some energized glowstone. So that's where we're going to use our glowstone. And that's basically it. That's all I'm really going to tell you about this crafting recipe, because everything else is pretty straightforward. These flux crystals, you're going to need 24 of these, and which is your 24 diamonds, and 48 redstone. So the same thing with the fluid transposer. And I think that's really about all I really need to tell you. I mean, this is a time-consuming process. I mean, it's really, once you have the resources in place, it's not terribly difficult. It's just time-consuming because there's so many freaking steps. Holy crap, that was a lot of freaking work. Man, that took a lot of time, and my calculations were a little bit off. Not terribly far, but there were a few things that I completely missed in that recipe. I'm not sure how, but let's check this out. We're still charging. Oh, excuse me. But we've already got almost 20 million RF, so we really shouldn't have to worry much. Let's see. Hover on, off. Actually, let's turn hover on so we can test this without, in fact, never mind. So let's give this a try. So I just walked off the edge there. So I did sink just a tiny bit because I can't get back here. But let's compare the speed now. We saw what the resonant looked like. Okay, this is really definitely faster. Holy crap. My server will definitely not be able to keep up with this. Wow. Whee! We can like hit the clouds just like that. And look at that. That would have been nice to have when we were first searching these alternate dimensions. Nice. Holy crap. Whee! That's better. Whee! I hope you enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad I have a crazy fast jetpack now. Whee! I hope you learned something from this. Nothing else, you learned that this jetpack is a pain in the ass to make. But I think it's worth it. At least that's what I want to believe after going through all that work. So if you did enjoy this, please click the like button and I hope you join me next time. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.